Tamayomi made up for a sparse episode last week by packing this week's episode full of information. What made this week's episode even better was seeing development without needing any gameplay to incite the action. Instead, all the progress came from developments outside the lines. The episode starts with Yoshino and Risa heading to the drawing for the Saitama Prefectural Tournament, with Yoshino geeking out over the players and teams she knows way too much about, and Risa visibly nervous simply to be in the space. Yoshino finds her behavior curious initially, but after hearing other players gossip about Shin Koshigayama's suspension the previous season, she realizes Risa wanted to spare the feelings of the rest of the team and take the brunt of the negative attention herself. The way the show has handled the scandal has been interesting. By not spending a lot of time on the scandal itself, it seems to be ignoring the impact it had in the moment and is asking the audience just to assume that it was bad and it shouldn't have been done. And while I wish it would expand more on what exactly happened so we can make our own judgments, that it's showing that fallout still exists from the scandal and that people that had nothing to do with it are still being emotionally impacted presents a worthwhile theme I haven't seen yet in a baseball anime before this season. Curiously, Major Second also started down this route before COVID shut it down indefinitely, which is probably just a coincidence but also maybe a trending theme in these kinds of stories. Anyway, Risa draws a team that won the prefecture 2 years ago, worrying everyone except for Nozomi, who wants to face the best competition possible. The girls strategize and train with what little information they have on their opponent, and when a particularly rainy practice session is over, Risa hands out the official game uniforms. And in an unexpected turn, Tamayomi stumbles upon a genuinely heartfelt moment. After handing out the uniforms for all 9 members of the team, Risa pulls out one last uniform with the number 10 on the back and offers it to Yoshino. As she's never played organized ball in her life, Yoshino is both shocked and ecstatic to receive the uniform, making her an official bench-warming member of the team. Of course, this isn't just a moment to tug at your heartstrings, as this pretty obviously sets up a situation where Yoshino is going to have to replace someone at some point in a critical moment as the only player on the bench. But it was at this moment when I realized I identify so purely with Yoshino and that she's probably my favorite character. Yoshino's presence in early episodes was almost exclusively expository, as she seemed to know everything about everyone as long as they were in some way connected to girls' baseball. A lot of times this show frames this as a joke, with the nosy blonde spending way too much time researching and fawning over middle school baseball players. But honestly, that's the reason why I connect with her so much. Yoshino geeks out over a thing that hardly anyone cares about, I geek out over a thing that hardly anyone cares about. So when Yoshino gets that number 10, I feel vicariously vindicated, and maybe even a little wistful. Not too wistful, mind you, because this show's animation quality, and storyline, and dialogue, and pace, and action are all still subpar. But even though there were no significant baseball developments in this episode, I'd pretty easily classify episode 7 as my favorite of the season so far. Things will still have to improve greatly in the final 5 episodes to rate this show higher than passable, but at least Tamayomi is heading in the right direction. Major Second, on the other hand, is heading in no direction, as I haven't heard a peep about when it is set to return. But I have seen a glimmer of hope on the plate of Food Wars, another show sidelined by the pandemic I was watching this season. According to the show's official website, the 3rd episode will be postponed until July 2020 or later. That's admittedly not a hard return date, but it is the first sign I've seen of a show postponing its season and announcing some form of intention to come back. A July return date, if it were to happen, sounds like everything would just be pushed up a season, which seems convenient if the health crisis and working conditions allow for it to happen. I also imagine Food Wars' international popularity allows it to set a date before other shows would, but I'm not sure how this would affect a show like Major. Perhaps because Major has less of an international following and isn't nearly as big a moneymaker as Food Wars, there will be less pressure to get the show out into the world. Or maybe because it isn't as popular, there's only a limited window to capitalize on people's attention. I think the first 4 episodes of Major Second were really good, and so I do hope I'll be able to finish it at some point, but there are more important things to address, and it can wait. Tamayomi doesn't seem to be waiting, however. I'm not sure how this show is getting made week to week or if it's already been finished like Sing Yesterday for me, but it keeps chugging along to the audience of me and maybe a few others. As long as its staff is not being put in danger, I very much appreciate the quarantine content. It's still a long way from being good, but it may get there.